I'm joined by economist James Galbraith, a professor at the University of Texas at Austin. Professor Galbraith, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, as we heard there in that report, a great deal of skepticism about the results that the first stimulus plan has yielded. Is it time for a second stimulus plan?
Well, first of all, the first package clearly did yield results. Without it, the situation would have been substantially worse. But at the same time, that package was predicated on the assumption that the unemployment rate was going to peak around 8%. And that was a wildly optimistic official forecast, and as a result of calibrating the package to that expectation, it was far too small. So further efforts are needed. We have a problem with the state and local governments' budget crisis. In the state of California, revenues are only about half of what expenditures are, and unless that gap is somehow filled, and it can only be filled by with federal funds, the states will continue to basically offset the effect of the federal stimulus package by the cutbacks that they're forced to make for budget reasons. So there are a whole range of things that need to be done. The AFL-CIO put out yesterday a 5-point package, which is very sensible, sort of outlining of the major priorities and things that could be done relatively quickly. But unless the effort is scaled up pretty quickly, everybody's going to continue to be very frustrated.
Well, as you say, a whole range of things needs to be done. Further efforts are needed. If you had to prioritize what the president needs to do right now, what would that look like?
The first thing I would do is to plug the gaps in the state and local government budgets for the duration in an open-ended way. No further job cuts, no further service cuts at that level of government. The second thing I would do, obviously you would need to extend unemployment insurance. I would seek additional support for infrastructure spending, and instead of restricting it to these very short-term so-called shovel-ready projects, I would plan on a sustained effort this time, one which would make significant changes, for example, to our transportation network, significant upgrading of our infrastructure, long overdue in this country. And I would then also take measures that would introduce a new competitive element in the financial sector and start private lending moving again. It's obviously not going to happen through the banking system, which is still severely impaired as a result of the financial crisis. So either you have to basically assume control of the banks, or you have to start setting up parallel institutions that will do that job.
And would this be money that would be lent to small businesses in the country?
In part, yes. I mean, I'm in favor of efforts to help small businesses. Keeping them going is very important. But jobs are created by both small and by larger businesses, and so one needs a very broad-based effort. And the problem with targeting things to small businesses is that so long as the overall economic climate remains bleak, they are rightly very wary of taking on new staff. So you just don't get very far forward, because the business people themselves can't really justify taking the risk.
There is that proposal to use the unspent TOP money for that particular purpose, for lending to small businesses on the basis of, you either use it or lose it. What do you make of that?
Well, to the extent that it would be a use for previously authorized funds, I'm not opposed to it. But unless there are significant new funds committed to the effort, I don't think it would be enough to turn the tide. And here's the problem. You were mentioning earlier that people are saying that the administration is saying that they're opposed to new efforts that might increase the deficit and the debt. But unless they increase the scale of their effort, which means increasing the deficit and the debt in the short run, they're not going to have a significant further effect. So they're basically either they're going to be defeating themselves.